You're listening to Owning the Buy Box, an IP Secure podcast. This is the podcast for agencies, brands, and aggregators who want to master Amazon, push out unauthorized competition, and take their business to the next level. You're about to hear a conversation that'll help you maximize your growth on Amazon by owning the Buy Box. Let's get into the show.
This is Dave Cooper. Welcome to Owning the Buy Box, the podcast where we talk about brand protection and its impact on sales and success on Amazon. And we're going to be joined by a variety of industry experts to discuss these topics. And today we're joined by Jed Nelson. Jed is the Director of Legal and Compliance for Caspian. And Caspian is a very successful seller on Amazon, has been for many years. Jed's got a wealth of experience. So Jed, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
I appreciate the time. I think your perspective is unique on this topic because you're both, or have experience, I think, both as someone who is, sort of protecting the sales channel on Amazon for your customers. You've also been the recipient of letters over the years because I know Caspian sells in a variety of different motions. So you've got a unique perspective, on the problem. Caspian, I know, is really successful. I think top 1%, is that right, of sellers on Amazon today?
Yeah, we're probably in the top 15 sellers, both private label and then also other third-party sellers. And what also kind of makes us unique is we kind of do three different business models. So we have the third-party business, we call it Caspian Retail, where we buy brands' products and we sell them on Amazon and other third-party marketplaces. We also have our own private label division that does about $5 million in sales on an annual basis, and we own several brands there. So we manage that part of the business. And then we also run an agency. So we took all of our expertise in retail and private label, and now we manage other people's brands for them, helping them manage their own Seller Central accounts and accomplish their goals. So we have a wide variety of understanding, with the different types of ways that people approach Amazon. To your point, we do work with distributors. It's been part of our business model since, I think, like 2013. And in the distributor side of things, we work with large, repeatable distributors, but that doesn't mean we always have a direct relationship with the brand. And so what we see is sometimes the brands looking to clean up their channels, institute brand protection, will send us the notifications or letters telling us, hey, you're not authorized to sell our product. And we get to have a conversation around their distribution channels and how to properly cut off a seller like Caspian. We want to work with brands. Our position is never to be adversarial. That being said, there's right ways to do things and there's wrong ways to do things. And we try to encourage brands, to not take the easy way out, but to really put in place the contracts and the protections and differentiation of their supply chain so that they can that when they do enforce it, it's legally enforceable, and they're working with their distributors to make sure that that's enforced through the distributors, not in opposition to the distributors.
Yeah. I mean, so as someone who I think because Caspian's unique, like you are seeing all the use cases and have experienced all the different use cases, I think that fall under the unauthorized sort of sales umbrella. And I think on Amazon, it's uniquely challenging because of the way that their platform is architected, because of the way that competition is introduced and really, prodded. And it's a highly competitive platform. You really need to know, what you're doing. And I think a lot of people that do brand protection on Amazon are not really thinking about the importance of the buy box and the financial and economic impact of third-party unauthorized activity and unauthorized sellers. For Caspian and its unique position in the market, what do you think are maybe one or two sort of significant problems you think that are created when you don't tackle unauthorized sellers, or if it's kind of left unchecked?
Yeah, so there's a number of challenges, both during COVID and post-COVID, and those things get exacerbated when you don't control the buy box, when you don't own the buy box. So with one of the brands we work with, it's a large pet company. They didn't really have MAP. They sold to a lot of different people. They've seen massive growth, and that's been fantastic for them. The problem is now that growth is slowing and they have excess inventory, suddenly they're seeing, that their channel is a complete and total mess. And then like Caspian, since we're one of their larger sellers, we're having a hard time running marketing because if you don't own the buy box, your marketing doesn't run. And so like the ads and whatnot that we would like to be running for this brand just aren't there because there's a messy channel. So if a brand's looking at what it's going to take to be successful, what you have to do is you have to have a clean channel with consistent pricing. And what that does for you is it allows you to run marketing on a regular basis. It allows you to make sure your content and the brand story you're telling is consistent because you're able to work directly with one or two sellers, your authorized sellers, to make sure that your pictures, your bullets, your description, your A+ content, all of it lines up and tells a story that then gets the customer to buy it. Your pricing needs to be consistent because one of the ways that you're able to differentiate yourself, particularly in a market where you might have excess inventory on certain products, is by running deals, like taking advantage of lightning deals, deals of the day, coupons, that kind of stuff. If you have inconsistent pricing across it, your deal of the day and your lightning deals, they're based on your trailing, I believe it's 60 days history, and you have to be able to a certain percentage down below that. So if you have MAP violators, well, then you have to cut it even further and further and further to the point that it's not profitable to run your deal. If you have consistent pricing, then it's much easier to know exactly what it's going to be for your deal and for your deal to run. And be able to still make money on it while also taking advantage of that large spike in sales and the halo effect that occurs after that because you've increased your rank. So ultimately, it comes down to that. We also see that brands that struggle in this area, oftentimes, like it's because they have leaky supply chains, and they haven't really forced some of the they've done out there, and it's hard to kind of understand where it is. Now, a lot of companies out there will just say, hey, we want to go after every single rogue seller, that exists. If you're a large brand and you sell in a lot of brick and mortar stores, like that can be a very arduous task and you spend a lot of money doing it. One of the things that I like about IP Secure is that it tells you who's actually taking the buy box from you. And so you can kind of focus your efforts, focus what you're looking at on the brands that are actually impacting your overall channel, as opposed to trying to take a look at every single thing that exists out there. Now, that being said, I would still encourage brands to take the steps that they need to in order to make sure they have great distribution channels, clear contracts, that the people who are selling their product are doing it in ways that are good for the brand and consistent with their other obligations. So limited Amazon channels. If you're a brick and mortar seller, you're selling brick and mortar and on your own website. Like these are best practices that brands should be, of course, following. But if you're going to start tackling the issue, knowing where the issues are, who's actually taking the buy box from your authorized sellers, what percentage they're taking it from, how much inventory they have, this is critical information so that you can kind of best utilize your resources and take out the ones who are really impacting and causing problems right at the beginning, as opposed to trying to catch everything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you talk directly with big brands and you talk to their, let's say their legal department, or even if they have their own e-commerce team internally, they think about policing their Amazon channel in terms of like pure risk mitigation, right? You ask them, are you successful at this? And they'll describe, let's say, the quantity of listings they removed. But there's no concept of buy box winners, actual sales, consumer awareness of that listing or is it even visible, right? Is it on page 50 of a search result? Is it on page 1? Those things matter, right? Because I think in a world like Amazon, where you may have, let's say, 3,000 to 4,000 sellers a day signing up to the platform, you've got millions and millions of sellers, right, on a global basis. How do you prioritize, to your point, who to go after? And it's got to be who you think is taking your sales. And I think focusing on buy box analytics and inventory analytics and the things that you can get your hands on to determine who's actually impacting your sales. So it's kind of interesting, right? Because you then pivot and you talk to really e-commerce professionals like yourself. And this is really where brand protection should live. quite honestly, because you look at everything through an economic lens. And I think when you apply brand protection in that same philosophy, what you realize is you have to do a lot less work for a much larger impact, because you're not flying blind. Mm-hmm. You're not just willy-nilly pursuing every seller you see. If they're not selling your product, if they're not taking buy box share from you, if they're not competing for that same customer, does it matter? I think an IP lawyer would tell you it does, right? Because it's risk, and I got to mitigate that risk, and that's fair, and I think that's appropriate. But in the world of e-commerce, it's probably not that relevant, right? We want to take actions that are really going to move the needle in terms of the revenue, in terms of the growth of our sales. What do you do in the beginning? What if a Caspian acquires a new customer, and do you ever have a scenario where the customer says, our channel's totally clean, Jed, like we've got this buttoned down, and then they come on board and it's maybe not what they thought? Does that happen at all?
So we vet brands. We don't work with every brand who comes to us and says, hey, why don't you buy our stuff? We take a look at it. We look at Keepa data. We can see who's been in it, if Amazon Retail's been selling it,
sure.
How many sellers on average have been selling it. And so we look at the history of things, and we use that to kind of guide it. And if you want to work with us and we sign an exclusive agreement where we're going to make additional commitments on marketing and inventory forecasting, et cetera, then we're going to ask you to commit to a certain percentage of the buy box. On average, that's 95%. We want 95% of that buy box on a regular basis, because that's how we make sure we're moving the volume to write those big PO checks and to pay for that marketing. And so we have a system that's in place. We don't always work with it. So ideally, we've caught all that up front. But as you know, sometimes brands are growing and they decide to, onboard another distributor, and they think they have everything worked out. And suddenly, there's 40 people on the listing that they weren't anticipating. That's when we have that conversation around, the buy box and how we need to start cleaning it up and what steps we need to take in order to fix the issues that we're seeing. And really the way I like to start on it is, again, looking at, okay, who's taking the buy box, who has the most inventory, and let's have a conversation. Let's work backwards on, where did they get the inventory? How do we then contact them to be able to get them to remove it and work it out? And if, there's a mistake that the brand's made, we at Caspian, Amazon and third-party marketplaces are complex, and the world that we live in is complex. And a lot of retailers out there, it's very much it's like a blood sport. You're constantly in competition. I want lower prices, and that kind of stuff. And brands are constantly negotiating on the other side, and it's that kind of a thing. The best relationships we have are ones where we try to partner. So we run forecasts. We provide that on a regular basis to our partners. Hey, we're seeing a slowing down in sales. We're now anticipating only going to order this much versus that much. And we have that conversation around, okay, what are the levers we can pull to maybe drive more sales? Is this something you're seeing across all your channels? Is it not? We have those in-depth conversations. And so at that case, we would probably pull back on our ordering, waiting for the channel to get clean. And we would work them through the steps of sending the letters, identifying the source of the goods, cutting off the source of the goods, working with brands to remove them. If they don't have, good controls in place around their supply chain, an authorized supply chain, helping them be able to get those resources and doing that. We'll refer them to potentially, outside IP counsel if they don't already have it, so that they can draft up what they need to in order to make sure that they have everything buttoned up, and then eventually file those complaints on Amazon. I'm a big fan of working with sellers. Most of the sellers out there in the space aren't trying to infringe. They're bad actors. Don't get me wrong. There are bad actors out there who are selling knockoff products or who really don't care at all. But a lot of people, they're just trying to make a buck. And they bought your product. They bought it, at Target, Walmart, some small brick and mortar, through a distributor, through a liquidation lot, and they're just trying, to sell it and make a profit. And so if you send them a couple of letters, let them know, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. You can have a conversation and work it out with them. And oftentimes they'll remove it and go sell it someplace else. And you don't have to necessarily take down their account and whatnot. Vice versa, some of these more sophisticated actors out there, they know what the first sale doctrine is. They know what their rights are. And if you go after them hard on Amazon and they've got the evidence behind them with the invoices, et cetera, they get reinstated, and or they could take legal action against you. I haven't heard it happening a lot, but if you're not doing it correctly, brands can sue you back for making a false report to Amazon. You declare that you are making a correct report. And if you don't have all your ducks in a row, you could theoretically have endangered your business and endangered your brand, opening yourself up to legal liability because you hit the easy button and said, hey, they're infringing, without necessarily checking all the boxes to make sure that those sales aren't covered under the first sale doctrine. Yeah,
that would always come up a lot when I dealt, like in my prior life, with a lot of corporate IP people, is this fear that exists that if I make a mistake, I'm going to create liability for the business. And for about 20 years, I ran a company that worked almost exclusively with corporate IP lawyers. And I know of one example of that happening in 20 years. One example of a seller who sued Disney because they shut her down, didn't follow the proper process. I think she was on Etsy. So she was making earrings or something that had, obviously some copyright or trademark content associated with it. And she was making them herself, and they shut her down and she sued them. And I don't remember if she won or they settled or what happened, but the PR alone was enough to really make them retreat, back into the bunker and say, we're not going to do gray market. Gray market is a dirty word, in the legal space, because it's a very difficult problem to solve. Counterfeiting, on the other hand, is I think more serious. It tends to get a lot of attention, obviously, because of the seriousness. It's a crime. People can be hurt by it. There's real consequences and liability. I understand all of that, but again, that goes back to brand protection being only a risk mitigation tool, and it's not. It's also a revenue growth tool. But you have to be willing to tackle gray market sales if you want to really grow that revenue. And so that means maybe venturing out into a place that you haven't before when it comes to sending a letter or taking an action, right, or protecting your channel. I'm always shocked when I talk to brand owners who don't send, I feel like it's okay to send a letter to someone on Amazon who's got 10,000 units of your product, selling it aggressively. You don't know where it came from. You don't know who they are. Maybe you're even in a location where you don't really do business. What's wrong with sending them a letter and asking them where they got the product?
Nothing. And if they're legitimate, they're going to respond to you and they'll have a conversation. That's the thing that kind of boggles my mind. There's plenty. There are bad actors out there, but you can identify that if they're not contacting you, if they're not having a conversation, if there's not willing to engage in a dialogue when you're trying to do it, they could be a bad actor and probably needs, do that test buy, make sure you're double checking stuff. That could be counterfeit inventory. If they're legitimate, if they're a company like Caspian or many of the other third-party sellers that are out there, either they're small and unsophisticated, or they're large and they're sourcing through large distributors, maybe that you're just unaware of. Distributors also sell to distributors. That's always one that kind of boggles brands' minds. Your goods don't just stay at this distributor. It goes to this other distributor who then sells it to this person, and then somebody else acquires it. That's how it goes. Letting them know that kind of information is good. And at one point, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we used to be a little more cagey. I guess we would just say, hey, we don't owe you anything. It would basically be our response back. And very quickly, we realized that caused conflict. And because we want to work directly with brands, we just started just saying, you know what, we're going to tell all our distributors, even if the distributors don't want us to necessarily disclose stuff, hey, this is where we get it. You can go talk to our account rep. We'll even give you contact information directly for the distributor so you can have that conversation with them. We don't want to end up in a position where, we're brand. We want to build trust with brands. We want brands to understand that Caspian is a good actor. It's our reputation that's on the line. And I think that a lot of other sellers out there will probably be in the same boat. If you just reach out, you don't have to be aggressive. You can just say, hey, where are you getting this inventory? Some agencies out there, they are aggressive. They say, hey, we're going to do this. If you don't respond to us within 48 hours, then we're going to send you one more notice. If you don't respond to that notice, within 72 hours, we're going to file an IP complaint against you because we don't know what the inventory is. I'm like, you're being aggressive. You're kind of starting to set up a fight. But I also get that they want some information to be able to dig into what's happening. I try not to take things personally too much. People are just trying to clean up their channels for good reasons. But there are better ways and worse ways of doing it. And you don't have to be, hardcore about it to get results, I guess what I'm saying.
You You already know your success relies on your Amazon sales growth, and that means beating counterfeiters and illicit sellers to the buy box. But do you have all the tools you need to do so effectively? IP Secure offers seller intelligence to understand and root out unauthorized sellers and push them out of the buy box through simple enforcement actions that actually work, meaning customers will only see your legitimate products and shop from your authorized sellers. Learn how at ipsecure.com.
If you're legitimate or believe you are, or acquired product from someone, right, who says, I'm a actual distributor for this particular brand, legally allowable distributor with rights, then you have nothing to worry about. Why would you not respond to the letter? I would actually probably be pretty flattered if I got the letter from the brand or the agency, because I'd be like, wow, that's cool. They actually noticed me on Amazon, little old me. And if you're operating in an environment that's okay and legally authorized and you're following the rules, then you don't really have anything to worry about, right? And I think is your point. When you don't get a response, or they change their Amazon username, or their business address changes, or they start taking steps to anonymize their behavior, to me that's great intelligence that helps you separate them from the good guy bucket into the potentially bad guy bucket. And so sometimes no response is as revealing as getting a response, I think, from some of these third parties. But it's really interesting to me that there's historically been this unwillingness. If I was walking down the street and I saw someone with a retail store that, and I didn't know who they were, and I'm in a foreign city and they're selling my products, you better believe I'm going to walk in the store and I'm going to ask for the owner, and I'm going to want to know where they got the product and who they are. And that's a retail store on a physical street that gets almost no foot traffic compared to an Amazon listing, which could be viewed by tens of millions of people within minutes. And yet there's this hesitation to take an action. It hasn't yet sort of mentally resonated that this ASIN level product listing on Amazon is the same thing as a storefront that's open 24 hours a day, except instead of maybe a couple hundred people a month walking in, you're going to get tens of millions. Which always kind of boggles my mind that people don't think about that way. How important do you think brand protection is to Caspian? I mean, you guys are really successful, and I think part of it is because you do a lot of things like really well, and as we talked about, I feel like Amazon is this machine with all these moving parts, right? And you need experts sort of at each one of those areas, making sure the machine is all working together. Just generally, I mean, how important is brand protection to Caspian and to your success?
It's one of the three pillars. So we consider it inventory management, advertising, and brand protection. Those are the three kind of major pillars that we build our business on. And they're all interrelated. So how do you do good inventory forecasting? Well, you have a clean channel so that approximately like, hey, if this listing is moving this many units on a weekly basis and I have 95% of the buy box, I can estimate that I'm going to need to order this many units in the next 6 weeks. If you have a messy channel with 30, 40 sellers in there and it keeps on going up and down and people have different pricing and all that kind of stuff, it's really hard to forecast what you're wanting to buy. How many are going to sell? I don't know. It depends on this week and what everyone else decides to do. And by the way, I don't know what they're going to do because they're other businesses. So you can't really pull any levers with that. And so you have to buy very conservatively, just in time. Having to buy 1 or 2 weeks worth of coverage, assuming that that's going to take me 3 or 4 weeks to do it versus a steady, consistent inventory. And then we already talked a little about the marketing side, but it's hard to control content when there's a whole bunch of sellers and everyone's contributing their own stuff. Yes, there is a ranking thing. Other Amazon experts out there are like, there's ranking, like, the brand and then large sellers, Amazon retail's at the top, smaller sellers go to the bottom. That's absolutely true. But I've also seen multiple times where, weird pictures get added to listings and, we're Caspian's a very large seller and we're trying to do it. And we're having to open up cases and contact brand registry support and try to get the listings flipped because some random seller who maybe has 200 reviews in the past and probably is doing less than a few $1,000s a month added some random pictures and the algorithm decided that their pictures were better than the actual brand certified pictures that we're trying to list. So like it happens. It seems ridiculous, but I mean that's the Amazon system. It's things happen. And so it's important that you're able to control the content, that you're able to run the marketing because you have the buy box and compete to get those additional customers. One of the things that I think brands don't realize is if you spend all your time managing your third-party sellers and your listings and trying to decide, who's going to get what sales, who's going to get, and treat them all equally and whatnot, you're not focusing your energies where it actually matters, which is competing in your category against your competitors. So you should be having conversations with your brands about, okay, what is it that my top 3 competitors are doing that I can do better? Is it better A+ content? Are they running more deals than me? What are they doing in advertising? Are they using DSP? Like that's the conversation you should be having, not, well, how do I take care of this seller, that seller, the other seller? Or how do I hold people to map? How do I like that kind of a situation is where a lot of brands find themselves spending their time, energy, and effort. And we just say, hey, you should be looking at 1 or 2, partners max, run the exclusive, and or sell yourself. Like I said, that's honestly what Amazon wants a lot of brands to do. And if you engage an agency to help you out, you can do it successfully. Even though it can be somewhat complicated and daunting for some of these brands.
So the point you're sort of making is there's a variety of elements that go into doing this successfully, but one of them is obviously controlling the channel, and you have a choice to make as a brand, right? I think a lot of them have a tendency to say, I want as many sellers as possible, right? Selling my product on Amazon. But what you're saying is, that maybe that makes sense because you think you're going to sell a higher volume of units because you've got more people offering the product. But the reality is that it's going to create more conflict and problems within your channel than it's worth. And actually, you'll probably sell a lot more, right? If you have one partner or maybe 2, but you can control that channel a lot more effectively.
Yeah, think about it as if Amazon was a mall, and you wanted to open up a store, but suddenly 50 people come to you and say they all want to open up stores in that mall to sell your same product. Do you really think that you're going to see more sales in that mall? That mall is going to have the same amount of traffic, the same amount of people walking through if you have 50 stores or if you have 1 or 2 stores. The 1 or 2 stores are going to capture that foot traffic, and adding more stores is just going to add more inventory, more people to manage, more things to happen. But that same traffic is going to go to all of those stores instead of those 1 or 2. So you're not really seeing more sales. You get more POs, but you're not really seeing more sales. And oh, by the way, logistics costs money. What's a better way of doing things? You can stuff a whole bunch of stuff into boxes and ship them, UPS parcel, or you can send 1 or 2 big orders, in pallets or a full truckload for 1 or 2 sellers and move that same number of units, but pay much reduced shipping prices because you're able to move it in bulk with 1 or 2 sellers. It's your economies of scale are there. And then if you want to drive more customers there, you've got to be able to do marketing. You got to make sure you're always in stock. And if you're doing those things, you can start benchmarking against your competitors to compete to drive more people to your listings and compete against them, as opposed to, again, trying to manage all of your third-party sellers who are all going to be demanding the same types of things. Hey, I've got stagnant inventory because, Joe Schmo over there is, violating MAP. I want to violate MAP too. Playing referee. And brands spend a ton of time doing that. When if they had a clean channel, they could spend their time and effort focused on their competitors, growing their overall business, reducing the rank on their products. That's where you should be focused on stuff. But it starts with a clean channel, which starts with brand protection. You have to make sure that you're able to provide that clean channel using the brand protection pieces, which means you have to be able to cut off the third party sellers because, if you're selling to a lot of people, maybe, some of them are now selling to Amazon retail or selling to other third-party sellers. A lot of these smaller sellers, they'll be in business for a year or 2 and then they go out of business and then, they're liquidating their inventory to somebody. And so very quickly you can end up with a lot of goods that are out there. Something else I don't think we've talked about at all is how this impacts your account health rating and your ability to do it. So let's say you're a supplements company, or let's say you sell a product that's regulated by the FDA. In some way, like a safety device or the CPSC. And you're selling product to a lot of sellers and something happens in the listing or there's a problem with your product. or let's say, that you have a whole bunch of inventory out there and some of it starts going expired, what can happen is Amazon can take the whole listing down. They can take, if you have commingled inventory, they can take all of that inventory and pull it off. And it's hard to work with 30 people to coordinate all the actions and figure out who did what happened with it, who's making whatever random claims in the content that got the listing restricted. Working with 1 or 2 sellers, you're selling yourself, you're able to have that control to know that your inventory isn't going to be expired when it's there, because you can go trace it back to the POs and know the lots and make sure things are happening. You can enforce non-commingled. You can, and Amazon has a pretty good process around that, but we still see issues occasionally with that now.
Sure.
You can make sure the content again is correct and nobody's making weird random claims like, it cures some kind of disease, which happens on a regular basis. Like you can have that kind of control over things that are regulated. That doesn't occur a lot. And by the way, Amazon's taking that more seriously now. It used to be back in the day, you could get away with a lot, and then every once in a while, a news article will come out. Amazon would crack the whip, and suddenly a lot of people get suspended, and then it would ease back up again. And we've been through multiples of these. I think Amazon's getting more to a point now where they're being more decisive on stuff. They have a shorter leash, and they're willing to not just go after sellers, but also after listings and products that on there that they think aren't going to provide a positive customer experience, or that might be somehow not in compliance with the law. And working with someone like Caspian, we have, I have a compliance team of 6 people. We work on this on a regular basis. We understand all of the Amazon policies, and we have outside experts in the EPA, the FDA that we work with on a regular basis so that we can help brands with answering any questions they have, with being compliant. If they don't have all their ducks in a row, they don't have all their testing set up, they don't have their certifications ready, we can help them do that to make sure that they're fully legit and can prove it to Amazon. Because if Amazon determines that your product isn't compliant, it's you're guilty until you prove to them that you're innocent. And by the way, they might require more than the regulatory agency requires. So it's
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a good reason to work with Caspian, because we have resources we can help brands out with. But just in general, I think brands need to remember that. And your typical third-party seller who's selling arbitrage or liquidation lots or buying from, Target or Walmart your product, they're not going to care. They're going to do it. I've seen 3M listings suspended. Because people are making weird random claims. I've seen stuff from Kraft Heinz, that's been suspended because of what third-party sellers are doing. These are large, legitimate companies. The products are probably absolutely fine.
Of course.
There's probably no issues, but the third-party sellers have made issues for them. And by the way, now if Kraft Heinz or 3M want to get that product relisted on Amazon to take advantage of those customers, they're going to have to jump through a lot of hoops, and it's not going to be an easy process.
It's like you really have to defend your operation in so many different ways, right? And so it's keep the sellers out, it's keep the content correct, it's don't have any regulatory issues, right? Because then you go down that rat hole. And it just occurs to me that the most successful companies like Caspian, really try to make sure that you've got the expertise, the tools, the resources, so that you're really operating as that one-stop shop, right, for the brand. And you've thought of all these potential angles, because there's so much to know and to have to do. It's overwhelming, even for people like you and I who kind of live in the space. I would only imagine being a brand owner and, inventing something, and I mean, who's got the energy, right, or the capability to really understand this level of complexity. And you mentioned some of the changes Amazon's making, right, in terms of looking at account and seller health, and maybe being more proactive in some of the actions that they take. It feels like that's a good thing generally, right, for the community. I mean, I think people like Caspian are going to thrive when everyone's playing by the rules, because you guys do, and that seems like a good thing. But it also feels like Amazon has a lot of programs and a lot of things. And do you find that like sort of your clients are just flat out confused by the sheer enormity of, is it brand registry? Is it transparency? Do I go to Seller Central? Who do I talk to? What do I do? Is that a kind of a common obstacle that you see?
Yeah, there is a lot of complexity, and then there's a lot of things that you don't know unless you know. Right. Recently, we were helping a brand who was having some issues, and the email address they used for their their primary email address, it can't send email. It receives emails, but it's a distro list, but it can't send email. Well, Amazon, for certain types of issues, requires you to send an email from the root email address, the admin email address of your account. It requires you to send it from it because that's how they know that it came from you, to a specific email address at Amazon. And if you can't do that, well, you can try to email it from one of the other ones, but they're going to kick it back and say, we need you to send it from your root email address, your admin email. And so it can cause all kinds of problems. Like, where's that written when you first sign up for your account? Make sure that this receives email. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not part of the process. And so there's all of these archaic things that, me and my team, we deal with this on a day-in, day-out basis. I mean, we're opening, 50, 100 cases a day on various types of seller performance issues. So we live in this, and we deal with the frustration and the escalations and all that. And we've learned most of the tricks, and we've seen most of the problems. But your average brand maybe deals with this once or twice a year. It can be very overwhelming, especially when you get like the automated messages that don't really say anything, but are supposed to be super helpful. Like we know how to kind of divine kind of what's happening and see beneath the surface and kind of go with some of that stuff. So we're able to do things there. I think that Amazon's complexity is why third-party sellers and agencies exist. I think Amazon would tend to think that, hey, that shouldn't be necessary. Well, if it wasn't necessary, why is such a large market exist? Well, it's because there's a lot of complexity that brands aren't equipped to be able to manage themselves. And sometimes it's just cheaper. Like it's cheaper to pay an agency to do it than it is to bring on an Amazon marketer, an Amazon compliance person, an Amazon inventory management. Like, it's cheaper to have an agency that has all of that in-house and has the economies of scale and the experience than it is to bring on those people, onto your team.
It's a critically important function. It's complex, and it's very difficult to be successful. And so when you find yourself in a business situation like that, you don't go to court and represent yourself. I mean, it's the same philosophy. So I wouldn't go and try to be an Amazon seller and all of a sudden represent myself and think I'm going to be successful. You need experts who've got a lot of experience doing it.
Yeah. And who've seen it before, who can walk you through the process. Otherwise, you can get stuck in these endless loops with seller performance. Amazon is changing the way that it's rating accounts here in the next about month or two. It was that you used to have your yellow, green, red, your healthy, at risk, and critical. They're now moving to a scoring system that will deduct points for every performance notification you receive, but then grant you points for every 200 successful orders that you receive. And if you have repeat violations, you can double points removed and whatnot. And so they're kind of moving it towards a scoring system that they're hoping will be more transparent. I'm a little skeptical of how this is all rolling out. I've seen a number of I've just seen a number of these things roll out. Most recently, the certificates of analysis they did around all of the supplements and whatnot, where they're requiring that, where it proved to be more complicated than they thought it was. And so they rolled it out once and they rolled it out again and they pushed it and then finally it hit. I have a feeling that some of these changes are going to probably be that way. But I do think that Amazon is getting serious about wanting to reduce the amount of resources they are in policing sellers who have consistent violations. So I would anticipate some additional major changes happening there. And I've heard about there being some potential absolute caps. Like if you receive more than 5 IP complaints, your account's gone. If you receive more than 2 restricted products, your account could be gone. I haven't been able to confirm, like there is a help page that says that, but it conflicts with other help pages that I've read that have more about the scoring-based system. So there's a number of things happening within the Amazon ecosystem with what's going to happen with enforcement. And there's a lot of teams working on a lot of different projects that are going to continue to do it, which again goes to that complexity and that need to control your channel and work with experts who can help advise you on the best ways to make sure that you stay compliant and your listings stay alive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the things that you just discussed are sort of critical elements to how brand protection on Amazon works. And if you're not aware of them and you're not working with an expert like Caspian to educate you along the way and sort of change your own processes, you're going to be completely caught off guard. And it's really interesting, Amazon's business. I mean, their latest earnings announcement was pretty transparent in the fact that, their third-party marketplace, AWS, of course, as well, their hosting business, but the third-party marketplace was, one of the real only positives of their earning announcement. So as a company, kind of a tough quarter overall, but their third-party marketplace was growing faster than they expected, and I think, that's interesting. And I think Amazon is very growth and financially focused as a business. And so they probably see an opportunity here to introduce maybe additional automation that might, to your point, reduce the friction and the burden that's being put on both their business, but also yours, right, as it relates to these problems. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I think they're starting to figure out that maybe less is more. Maybe it's not about pure volume of sellers, and what we want are better sellers who give a better consumer experience. That makes sense to me. I mean, how many trillions of revenue can you generate in a year? At some point, your growth is going to plateau a little bit when you've dominated the universe, right?
I think that what they're realizing is that the complexity of managing all of these sellers and the gamification of things haven't always produced the results that they want to for customers. So if you go ahead and Google like something that you're looking for, like office chair, and then look at how many of the products in the top 100 are not office chairs. Look at how many products in that top 100 are the same product, but with different random names, none of which means anything. Yeah. They're not branded or anything else. It's the same exact product, the same exact chair at, however many different price points, but from different sellers. Like you start looking at that, and then you think about that as a consumer who's looking for something, who's just looking to buy an office chair. That's not a good experience. Yeah. So how do you reduce that complexity? How do you help that? How do you help your consumers find, the top 15 office chairs that they would actually want to buy, compare them on price, compare them on features, and then buy the one that's happening? Well, you have to have, better content. You have to kind of cut down on all of the gamification of stuff where people are advertising things that aren't, chairs in the chairs, because they know that they can find, like, they want your eyeball. They're hoping that, hey, it's my fishbowl that I'm trying to sell. But if I put, awesome office chair, I'm going to get all these people who are looking at office chairs and they're just going to buy my fishbowl, right? Well, maybe. It's a tactic, but it's not a great customer experience when everyone's doing it across the board. And so Amazon's trying to enforce rules around this stuff, make sure that you're not stacking keywords or trying to, divert traffic, and that you're following the rules, you're adding good content, you're moving through product through the ways that you should be doing so by, optimizing, sending people off Amazon onto Amazon, running marketing, running deals. Like, those are the ways that they want to encourage people to continue to grow their business. And by the way, that's sustainable. It's a better consumer, better customer experience, and it's going to help them grow the platform larger. If it feels too flea market-ish, if they don't continue to make those strides there, customers will find someplace else. They'll go back to brick and mortar. They'll find another more curated website, maybe a brand's individual website, to go buy what they're looking for.
Yeah, we've already seen that happening, right? We've seen the rise of Shopify. We've seen the rise of other platforms, I think, which are a direct result of that, of brands' desire to have a unique identity. It's really hard to have a unique identity on Amazon. It is. Even like the store structure on Amazon hasn't changed in forever, right? I
think that you can still tell your story on Amazon. So the customer is still on Amazon. So it's the difference between, setting up your shop, in downtown Main Street, and setting up your shop in the mall. Where's the foot traffic at? Where are people going? People trust Amazon. They trust Amazon's return policy. They love Prime 2-day delivery. Like they want to be there. And so you can still tell your brand story, but going back to that whole point on working with an agency or with a large third-party seller like Caspian, you have to have resources to build out that A+ content, those bullets, those descriptions, the videos, et cetera, that tell your story, that allow consumers to understand your product and want to buy it within honestly a store that makes things look largely generic in comparison on price and features. Like that's kind of what Amazon does. But you can still do it. You just have to have the resources to put behind it in order to make sure that you're able to stand out in what happens. And I do think that Shopify is going to continue to grow, but I think that people have been burned a lot buying on other places around the internet. And so that level of trust that, like, I'll be honest, I buy more stuff on Amazon than I probably should, because I know that if it doesn't work out the way that I think it's going to, it's really easy to return it. If I buy it on somebody's website, I'm probably thinking twice or three times on that, because I'm probably not going to have that same easy experience, 3 clicks, print the label, drop it off my local UPS store, that I do with Amazon. And so if you want to move product, I think you have to be on Amazon and other third-party marketplaces, Target and Walmart. I mean, we see Target really, really growing. Walmart it's there. I think that Walmart has the resources to compete, but I think that Walmart has some room to grow in really like building that customer trust. But really, Amazon is where so many people are at, and so you have to be able to do that. And if you're not, and for instance, like I joke about this, how many go look at Kirkland brand on Amazon?
Yeah.
Does Costco sell on Amazon? No, but people want Kirkland brand Costco products on Amazon. And so people have found ways to get it there. So you might say, I don't want my brand to be on Amazon. Well, good luck. People are going to find it. They're going to tell stories. They're going to sell your products. And you can either do it, in a way that is beneficial to your brand, or you can do it in a way that, you just kind of turn it over to these third-party arbitrage sellers who maybe don't care so much about your brand, and are just trying to make a buck as fast as they can, and are willing to, list that it cures cancer or whatever else to try to just, move more units.
Yeah. I can't tell you during my career how many times I went to a meeting, again, with a brand directly, and they would say, well, we don't sell on Amazon. What? Well, and really what they meant to say, and I understand what they're saying, but it's incorrect. Really what they meant to say is, we don't benefit financially from the sales of our products on Amazon. That's really what that person was saying. Someone is. It's not us. And to me, that's a sort of amazing thing to say when it, again, is half of every dollar spent on the internet, almost half, is spent on Amazon. And you're telling me that you have no skin in the game? You're not there? I disagree. A quick search will demonstrate that your products are everywhere. You just have no control of it, and you're not benefiting from it. Now, I think that's the minority of the cases now.
Yep. And it might be a big brand, and you have no brand store, you don't have video, you don't have optimized content. I mean, how do these small brands, that are young entrepreneurs sourcing out of China, competing with the 3Ms, Kraft Heinz's of the world? It's because they actually care about what they're doing out there. They have good branded content. They're running advertising. They have clean channels. And so they're able to get those sales that otherwise would have gone to these massive, brands that have the resources behind them. Because those massive brands aren't paying attention. They're not creating that same experience, that easy shoppability for people. They're being sold by these, honestly, the liquidators and the arbitrage sellers of the world, who, hey, it's a UPC, it's a listing with 3 bullet points and a description, and someone's going to buy it. So here we go.
I mean, and there's huge amounts of money at stake, huge amounts, right? We know lots of brands that have ASINs that are generating, millions and millions a year. Every hour you're not the buy box winner, you're losing money. It's just a question of how much. And I don't think people recognize that. And I think I agree with you. I do think in many ways Amazon has been an amazing sort of invention and opportunity for brands, because we know lots of small and medium-sized brands that no one would ever have heard of if it was not for Amazon's platform and Amazon's reach and how easy they make it for consumers to engage with those brands. So for every sort of negative thing people like to throw out about Amazon, we need to keep it in perspective that without it, many of us would not have jobs.
Amazon is what they've done well is focus on what the customer wants. I think that brands take advantage of it need to understand how to be successful. And I think that that's where there's sometimes a disconnect, particularly with the larger brands, but even some of the smaller brands, that they think that more sellers is beneficial. It's not. They think that, I can just list product and call it good. That's not sufficient to grow your sales in this marketplace. You have to have the ability to do inventory forecasting, run marketing, control your content, tell your story, engage, with your customers here, where you will lose out to other people who are doing those things. Because guess what? For every 3M that's out there, there's somebody else who's saying, hey, 3M's doing a terrible job of selling on Amazon. I bet I can make a product that competes with whatever it is that they have, sticky notes or whatever. And I can make it compelling, interesting, et cetera. And I can compete with them directly. Now, are people going to buy sticky notes, from 3M? Yes, they are. But would 3M sell more if those listings were optimized, if they had put all that into it, and it was part of a brand store, and they had all the options listed out next to each other so that people could determine what they were looking for specifically in a sticky note. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go about getting that customer to find your product and buy your product versus the competitors that you're missing out on if you just kind of, people sell it. I write big POs. I sell to distributors. They move lots of inventory, and I'm kind of customers buy it however they want to. And again, the sellers are trying to make money, and Amazon takes a cut of everything. So small arbitrage sellers don't have the resources and bandwidth. And by the way, if they're one of 30 sellers, why would they? To optimize the listing content, to make sure that there's good keywords in there, to run marketing. They don't have the margin there. And that's not to ding on arbitrage sellers. Caspian's done arbitrage. In our early days, we started as a small startup. We got to a mid-sized company, and we said, hey, there's this whole market out here. We can go buy, truckloads of stuff that are just being liquidated, and we can sell it on Amazon. We've done that. But that's not brand building. There's
nothing wrong with that.
No. But it's not brand building. If you are a brand, you want to build your brand, which means you have to content.
That's right.
And it comes back to having good brand control to do those things.
Yeah, I think a lot of those big brands look at it and they say, well, we've already been paid for the product, right? It's gray market. It's authentic. Mm-hmm. We sold it to some distributor who sold it to another one, who sold it to another one, eventually winds up on Amazon. And so they look at it and say, this is not a lost sale for me, but it is, because it's an opportunity for them that they're passing up. And it also is an opportunity for bad guys, which they're leaving the door open for. It also means the consumer could have a really bad experience, right? And I can tell you, it's interesting that when we talk to customers who do a lot of buying on Amazon, they definitely share the responsibility of a negative experience equally with Amazon and with the brand. So there is, that brand, is definitely being dragged along with that negative experience that the consumer has, because when they got to the buy box, it was some unauthorized seller who sent them something in a ripped open box with pieces missing or something. And now all of a sudden they're upset with Amazon, of course, but they're also upset with that brand. And they feel like, how could they allow this to go on? Right? If you're the market leader in that space, whatever category it is. So it's really interesting to me. And again, Jed, I think your perspective in particular is really interesting because of all the angles. So you've kind of seen it all. And so this has been really helpful. I think that's probably all the time we have today, but generally speaking, I really appreciate you coming on, because we believe, and part of why this podcast has been created is that, brand protection as sort of this umbrella term is changing, and it's moving from the pure risk mitigation area that it lived in before, right? Corporate legal. And it's moving into the e-commerce realm. All the things you've talked about, inventory management, and content and fulfillment and, all the elements, right, that create a healthy, growing, prosperous e-commerce operation. Brand protection needs to be a part of that. And I think the companies that figure that out quick, to your point, and educate themselves and build out an infrastructure and maybe get some tools and some smart people, they're going to have a lot more success in the long run. And So thank you for the time today. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on and answering our questions. And obviously, if anyone wants to reach out to Caspian, wants to work with you guys, or has questions about anything we talked about, what do you think is the best way for them to go ahead and do that?
Well, we have our website. It's Caspian.com. There lists all the services that we provide. There's a lot of helpful information on our blogs, posts, podcasts, etc. That we do internally that are just free education, for brands that are looking to grow. You can reach out to us through that. If you have any questions about this, by all means, reach out. Let me know if there's any questions. My email address is jedn, Jedn at Caspian.com. And thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. So again, if you want to reach Jed, you can go to Caspian.com. You can email him at jedn@Caspian.com as well. They're a full service provider. So there's a lot of different things they can help you, to do on Amazon and to be successful. And obviously brand protection is a key part of that value proposition. Jed, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And we'll hope to see you soon.
You've been listening to Owning the Buy Box, a show from IP Secure. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share episodes that you love. That helps us keep delivering you the tools you need to sharpen your competitive edge and ensure your authorized sellers always own the buy box. We'll see you next time.